Today's oil painting project will be a mixed media painting, and we're going to do a lovely ocean. Let's go up to our Get in the Mood board and see what we've got for ideas and reference today. Well, it looks like to me it's some of the cards I had in Hawaii, and there's Diamond Head, and there's a couple of others there, but it's a beautiful moonlit scene. So I thought today we would do a moonlit scene of an ocean wave breaking in on the shore, and I've done a few things up on the canvas to prepare and be ready so I can complete this for you today. Let's look at the canvas, and I have a blue acrylic underpainting on. I mixed a little ultramarine blue and a little bit of yellow ochre and white and got a nice blue tone. Most of this will get covered up, but it will make it much easier to achieve the painting in this one session. I also have a layout of line using white graphite, or you can use a white chalk pencil and position your all the objects on your canvas and maybe go over them lightly so you can see them as a reference guide. You don't need to do anything special. If you want to make it a little easier on yourself, you can take a little sticker. These are like price stickers that you can buy in the art supply store or in a shop where you can buy office supplies, and you can put that up on there where you want to put the moon. This is a good reference piece. By putting this up here and pressing it on, it can help you guide your path of light down across the ocean. You're going to paint it, but I think it'd be easier if you put that up there. So we're going to go ahead and apply that, and then we'll paint around it, and then we'll take it off and paint the moon in there. Let's get our path of light established and go down to the palette. And I'm going to use a bristle brush for most of my initial block in, and we'll start with maybe a little bit of my base white and a touch of blue. And I want to get a little bit of foundation for where the light is going to be on the water. I'm going to establish this a little lighter than I will the rest of it, so I'm using a little titanium white in that also. Now this is going to be the light path from the moon on the water. So we'll start right about through here at the horizon and just begin to streak in the open wave sections, go below our big main wave and streak in the light path. And you want to make sure that you stay kind of in direct line with the path of light and stay vertically underneath. So we want it kind of equally distributed on both sides. Well, I also have this color. I'm going to take it a little bit stronger. I'm using a touch of Prussian blue and a touch of phthalo green into this mixture. And I want to create the same type of light as an aura around the moon, just kind of a semi-glow. And I'm going to surround the little piece of paper up there and make a small circular, not too perfectly circular. Let's make it a little erratic in its shape, and paint around the moon so there's a little glow. So this is a little lighter value, as you can see, than the middle tone background acrylic that's already dried. Being a mixed media, I don't have to worry about mixing with this because it's dried, so I'm just covering it up in certain stages. We'll immediately get a little bit darker with our colors using, again, phthalo green and Prussian blue. And I'm going to look for some kind of the middle light colors in here, and you can see this is almost the same coloring as the background color. You can use phthalo green and acrylics and achieve this. But I'm trying to get a little application of paint. Now you probably can't see too much of where I'm putting that on, but I will be connecting to that with a darker value. Go a little bit back around and connect to the moon glow. I'm softening the edges, so you almost can't tell much of what I've done, but you can see that gives me a nice impact there. Before I put on my really dark values, I'm going to go ahead down and mix up quite a bit of paint. I'm going to take a nice big healthy chunk of titanium white, set it on the side over here, and a touch of alizarin crimson so that I can get kind of shadow clouds for the clouds up in the sky. And I want this to be kind of a mauve-y lavender gray. And the alizarin with the blue and the phthalo and the white will make a nice gray tone. Okay, let's see if this is going to be dark enough. Well, it's a little light. I don't want this to be too daylight of a sky, but against your middle tone, it'll look a lot lighter. These are going to be little clouds floating up in the sky here. And I'm just kind of swirling this bristle brush. This is a stiff bristle brush, getting it to cover fairly well and get a little light in there. We'll even have a little bit of light back over behind the Diamond Head Mountain here. Just right down and almost sitting on that line there. Okay, we'll use this same value to do a little bit of the shadow foam. And I think I will darken it just one shade. It needs a little bit darker. I'll use a touch more blue and a touch more alizarin. Okay, let's go up, and this is the foam of the dump of the wave, and I'm going to put this in And again, I'm just kind of swirling the brush, stirring in circular motion. That gets me in the mood for the action of the water. And by keeping the brush swirling and moving, I'm churning the strokes and getting a little variety of action in there, just up over the eye of the wave. There's another foreground wave that we're going to have in there. I don't know if you can see behind me the painting. And we're going to get a little bit down around in there. It goes back behind the rock. And I'm staying on the high side of the foam because I want it a little darker down at the bottom. And I see a little bit of this in the direct path of light in the shallow water on the shore. I'm going to pull vertically down, and then I'm going to just kind of zigzag across it, and we'll put a brighter light inside of that once we put the full light on. Okay, I've pretty well got those lights on. I think we're going to strengthen our color, adding more Prussian, more phthalo, real deep, rich ocean colors. It's really the choice of the selections. I've done this so many times in different tones. It just depends on what you're interested in for your color tone. But I lean a little bit heavier on the phthalo greens in this because I just like that phosphorously green look in it. Okay, we want a little bit over in here. And a little bit in the middle water between the waves. And right now I'm just trying to get the canvas covered. And in the flat water that isn't moving or churning or being lifted up, my strokes are horizontal. When I get up into the lift of the wave or the uplift, you have to start stroking with a little bit of a contour to pull the water up in that area. Now we'll leave the eye of the wave and we'll put some light in there to get a translucent look. Again, we're continue connecting in the water and we're basing in the water area. This is the back water between Diamond Head and the first wave. And we will be getting darker. We want to complete the idea by bringing these same colors up into the sky. So let's get just a little bit of this dark up in here between the clouds and the moon. And again, I'm just kind of scrubbing loosely with the brush so I get a little action and movement in there, and we'll soften because this is supposed to be a midnight or a moonlit scene. And I'm kind of dancing around the edges of the clouds. And this is kind of one of my darker tones. We'll go over the Diamond Head Island area. Maybe a little bit between two sections of island there. Okay, and I'm going to soften. And this is giving us a start to build on. It's just little tickles and moves and really airy type of clouds in the late night sky. Okay, let me step back and see how that's working. Well, that's pretty good. I think we're going to just leave it kind of like that in this stage. We can always add more light to the clouds. Let's continue with a little bit of this middle tone value just up over the light and go off the canvas. It's so similar to the background color I selected. You're not able to see a lot of what I do, but you can see there is a little bit of a value change there, and that's what I'm looking for, just a shade darker. I'm going to come back down here over the horizon because I'm going to put real dark water in the water. Dark color in the water, so I want a little lighter value there. Let's go back down to the mixing spot on the palette, and you can see I've got kind of a dark tone and a light tone. I'm going to go back to the lighter value, maybe mix them together a little bit so it's not quite as light, and I'm going to bring that up and put it just over the horizon. This gives it a little bit bluer cast, and then when I put my darker value, it'll work better. Just kind of a little light glow off the water at the horizon. During the moonlight, you wouldn't see too much of this. It'd probably be very black, but I just think it'll be attractive to have it there. So I decided to put it there. So that does what I want in that area. I don't think I need too much more of this. Maybe that same color down at the bottom edge of the foam. And I'm going to, this is still in the foam bank, or the billowing water as it comes over. Get that a little darker in there. Mix together as you kind of, again, keep the brush moving so you get the action of water. You don't want it to be just flat and standing there. Here's a little bit more. I don't know, can you see how that's a little darker than the other color, but not as dark as the color below? So you want to make sure your values have a little variation so that you get more interest and separation. Okay, this is all the way across, back over in front of the rock, and it just disappears over there to the right. Okay, with a line drawing like this, it should be pretty easy to guide your illusion as to where the waves go and the flat water goes. I'm going with a darker value now with both alizarin and a touch of alizarin, that is, and phthalo and Prussian. So I'm getting a very dark, rich, kind of midnight blue color. I want this just about as dark as I can get it, but still on the deep blue-green side. Let's come back up to the canvas and see about going just under the island. Oh yeah, that's a nice rich blue color. We'll just kind of streak some of that and come over here to the right, almost finding the horizon line. Now you can see why I put the lighter value above, so that I wouldn't just fade right up into the sky. We'll darken that over there. Again, I'm using my strokes horizontally in the flatter water areas, and then when I get into the wave area, I begin to stroke with an uplift. We'll come up under a little bit of foam crash right there, and then let it melt down. I carry my strokes along a baseline. There's a line here at the base of the wave that I kind of slide down to. I try not to go below that line. Okay, then we're going to come over underneath the foam, and we're going to just bring a little of that extra dark, not too straight, underneath it, and soften it so we get a little movement, a little action, a little lost edge in that area, just under the eye. Oops, lost a little bit of my foam over that section. Okay, now at this area here, the water is going to dump down or be falling forward into the foreground wave, so I'm just going to kind of stroke my brush in the direction that I feel that the water would be cascading forward. At one point it goes to the left because I'm looking straight into the ocean or straight out into the ocean, and I want that to have a feeling of coming this way and that way, so I have to go to the left in one area, kind of straight down in the middle, and that gives me that turning point so that the waves aren't all going in one direction prospectively. Okay, a little more dark over in here. We might make that a little more purplish in that area. Okay, this is going to be a rock right in there, so we'll just put a little quick R in there so we have that in. I want it pretty dark over here and underneath the front wave. Again, I'm making sure my edges are pretty soft, and that's what I want for the moonlight. You don't want too many hard edges in moonlight. Let's go in there and just tickle with the end of the brush is about all I'm doing. Okay, now that I've got that blocked in, I think I'm going to switch brushes just for a minute and get a little bit softer brush and come back down to the palette and lighten my color with just a little bit of white, yellow ochre, just a touch of yellow ochre into this blue. So in the eye of the wave, I can go ahead and establish that light. Even though it's not in direct path with underneath the moon, that would still be affected with translucency. And oh, that's a little too light. Let's get a little phthalo green in there. Just a little too, want a little greenish look to it. That's much better. Right up underneath there. Let it soften. Notice how my strokes begin to curve with the contour of the movement of the water. Yeah, that's nice there. And we'll just leave it kind of like that at this point. Okay, I have to go back to my other brush, the bristle brush that has the dark on it. And I want to get a little bit of the dump right in this area that is falling. As the water is drawn up, it is cast forward over to the left. And I want to get that established. Quite simply, and I'll be bringing foam and all on top of that. We'll use the same watercolor to go up in the sky and darken up in the corners of the canvas so that the sky looks more like a night sky. So we're going to scrub that in and darken the upper corners and across the top for my dark sky. If you run out of paint, just pick up a little more. It's not a lot of quantity I'm putting on. The looseness of how I apply it is more important than how much I put on. Okay, that's got my sky fairly well blocked in. I'm going to use a different brush to make a little wispier look to the clouds. Let's go ahead and block in the beach down here, the little island of Diamond Head, and the rock. And we're going to use a very dark value for that. We'll come down to the palette in a different mixing spot. And let's see, we can mix all different kind of colors to get kind of a black. I think I'm going to use my phthalo green and alizarin crimson. That makes a very good rich dark. I have on the palette some burnt umber and some Van Dyke. They would also work, but I think I want to keep this a little bit on the warm side, so I'm going to use the alizarin crimson one to make a warm black. Burnt umber is just a little too warm. Okay, we'll use this to come up and block in the Diamond Head, and you can see with how dark that is, but there is a little red cast to this That's the basic shape of Diamond Head. Block it in, and we get this on it, and it really makes your sky look so much lighter than it was. Real shadowy. There's a little bit of a further part of the island of Oahu behind it. But Diamond Head kind of just sits out there all by itself near the beach. I'm going to wipe my brush. I want to soften this edge. It's a little too crisp and a little too hard. I like soft edges, so the dry brush, I just lightly float over the edge, and it pushes it back away. And it's a little more attractive than having that as such a hard line of paint. Yeah, that I like better. Even the moonlight would affect that just a little bit, so I think I'll add just a little bit of ochre and alizarin on the tip of the brush, maybe a touch of white, and suggest a little bit of movement of the ridges and all on Diamond Head. Let's see if this will show up. I'll first put it on and just begin to suggest these ridges, the little moonlight playing on the front face of it. I'm not going to do anything to the back side of it, and design that as kind of a sloping volcanic ridge right down to the ocean. And I think that's pretty well about all I'm going to do for that. So that makes it a lot more interesting than just leaving it flat. I know it's very dark, but it's basically what I need to establish that. Since I used the black in the brush and then put the yellow and green, I'm going to clean it and dry it thoroughly. I want to make sure I don't leave any thinner in my brush before I reload and go back to the waves and all. Well, we should have done I'm going to have to use some more of that. I forgot to do the rock. Let's go back and do the rock. I have to reload again. We'll block in the rock. Get ahead of myself on these shows sometimes, trying to cover everything I can for you. There we go. That's a little reflective shadow down into the pool of water there. Just keep it soft. This is just a rough block in at this stage. It's going to be the rock, and then we'll do the beach, again using the alizarin crimson and phthalo, or you could even have a little warmer tone to the beach, a little burnt umber. So as we block that in, we will get that whole beach area blocked in. And that wouldn't reflect as much light, so we're just going to keep that kind of dark in that stage. There, that's nice. Now what's going to make such a nice strong contrast is when you get the light water, when I do the final stages, and get the real lights on the water pulled in. Let's just lightly float. I think I'm going to bring that warmer. I'm going to use more burnt umber on the tip of the brush. I want that to be a little warmer where the moonlight would kind of affect that dark sand. If I use a lighter value, it would take away from the ocean. Well, we've got a pretty good block in at this stage. We're not going to finish the rock or the waves and all. Let's go back for just a minute, 1 second, and block in one more step. I forgot a little bit of area here that I didn't put of a little bit of the wave right up on the top edge there. Okay, yeah, that's what I need. All right, let me check this out. I've got everything covered. Well, that's a pretty good block in for all our positioning and all the base colors for everything. We need to go back up to the moon for a minute, and we'll remove this little paper thing, and you can see the blue acrylic still underneath there. Let's use a smaller brush, a little bit of titanium white with a touch of ochre, and see if we can get the little moon blocked in so that he stands out very bright, or brightly. And see if I can draw a circle today. If not, sometimes you can do it with your finger. It won't work rubbing it in with your finger this time because of the blue acrylic. You'd probably take off too much paint. But I do want to soften that. I think I'm going to take a little bit of a mop brush and just lightly soften that so that it kind of pushes it away and makes it a little more hazed. See how that connects it better? A little less obvious with a rim of paint, and then I'm going to go in and touch a little bit more light in it. Oh, that made a big difference. Just a little softening. And then I can go back and touch a little accent within it, make it a little brighter with the second coat. Usually that works the best way so that you don't have a rim of paint around the edges. Okay, and we'll soften that just a little bit again. Soft brush, knock out some of the hard edge. Don't want to leave your paint standing up too thick on the canvas. Okay, that's going to be fine for there. Our next step should be to take a knife, and I think I'll use my painting knife is very comfortable in my hand, so I'll use a painting knife. I'm going to use a little white with a touch of ochre, and suggest the glimmer on the water and the path of light again. Now I had established that earlier as a direct line coming down from there, and I'm going to keep that in my mind as I start touching the edge of the knife and putting the little glint down in the flat water. I'm not going to work on the main wave yet. Leave a little space of distance so that you have room for shadow from the wave on the water, and then come down in here. And I'm just touching and lifting. I'm not sliding too much so that it kind of breaks and gives me little dots of paints in a line, so that it kind of shimmers and sparkles in the water. I'm going to extend that a little longer on the back horizon. That's pretty good there. Now to put the paint on the waves, I'm going to use a fan brush. It's clean. I'm going to use a little bit of thick white paint. This is white with a little yellow ochre. And I'm putting it on one side of the brush only, kind of on the bottom edge, and kind of tapping it. Then I flip that paint up, and I'm going to just kind of push and poke off the paint on the top of the brush and kind of walk across the crest of the wave like this. Get a little impact. Need a little bit more. In fact, before I do that, let's get a little bit of that paint on the brush, and I'll keep it under the brush, and we'll make the spill, or the water as it falls forward. That's over the dump, over the dark eye place. So that makes the water cascade to the front. I started on this one so it would be brighter, so by the time I come over here, I've picked up a little blue, and it will be less noticeable over here on this part of the dump. And then we'll do a little bit here. Remember, it comes to the left, down, to the right. Just a little movement and action for the water. As I pick up a lot of paint, you will have to reload, but allow it to mix so that you don't get too much power in too many areas. We're going to use that same paint to put a little dancing movement on the surface of the water. And I've got the paint more on the bottom edge of the brush. Let me see if I can show you that a little better. It's only paint on one side, and a little too much. Make sure there's nothing really on the top. So the paint's coming off the lower edge, and I'm trying to skim little mini waves, little tiny movements in this area, a little bit of an uplift. You're still in moonlight, so you don't want too much going on. And I'll even soften a few of the little chunks in the water there. Back here, we're just going to kind of skim a little glisten occasionally, but we don't want to overdo it. Now we can come back and put the highlight on the top edge of the wave. Let's come back with this is yellow ochre and white. A little bit of push up here and make it a little splashier. And I'm kind of crushing the brush sometimes to get a little more movement and action out of the foam. And you can see now with the darker value I established earlier that it loosens it up, but it stands out. And I don't want it too tight. I want it to be a really churning type of ocean. Let's come down with a little bit of that thick white and see if we can get a little reflection on the glisten here and a little bit of a rim on the shore. Let's cut this back a little bit. Let's cut off the corner of that rock. Little movements of subtleties that hopefully are going to do nice things around the rock. So I like to cut off the corners. Sometimes they look a little abrupt as you pull a point down. So sometimes I swing around it and kind of round the corner of the rock out a little bit, if I feel it needs it. Sometimes it doesn't. All right, we need to go up here and kind of soften this in. I applied the paint. Now I'm just kind of mixing it or making it looser. And I think we're going to need a little more into the eye of the wave. Let's make a nice splash right in here. Oh, that's coming along pretty nicely for the action of the water. You've got to keep your brush moving kind of loosely to get it the best effect. You don't want to make it too stilted looking. Let's bring a little more light right down in here. That's where the water is moving. This is a more powerful area here. So I want to make sure I keep it that way. I think you've done all I can do today. Please join me again. This is Lynne Pittard. I want to invite you to visit our website, www.lynnepittard.com. You will find hundreds of paintings and products for your convenience. We also have available over 70 programs on DVD. You can learn how to paint or just brush up on your skills. Don't forget www.lynnepittard.com and make your painting experience more memorable.